The evening air in London was crisp, the kind of cold that made the windows fog up while the streets shimmered with rain. Inside their small but warm apartment in Kensington, Layla moved quickly between the kitchen and the living room, her heart beating with anticipation. She had decorated the table with soft candles, white lilies, and the dinner she had prepared with care. Adam's favorite dish, a mix of Indonesian spices that reminded them both of home. It had been 2 years since they exchanged vows at a small registry office, promising to face the world together. Layla still remembered her wedding day vividly, the nervous smile on Adam's lips, the way he held her hand tightly, whispering that life would be brighter in London because they had each other. For Layla, the anniversary was not just a date on the calendar. It was proof that their love had survived the challenges of living abroad, the loneliness, and the pressure of making a home in a foreign country. She glanced at the clock, smoothing the fabric of her dress. She had chosen something simple yet elegant, a soft cream dress that made her look graceful without trying too hard. The door opened and Adam stepped in, his coat damp from the drizzle outside. Layla smiled brightly, rushing to greet him. "You're late," she said softly, half playful, half anxious. "I thought maybe you forgot." Adam did not smile. He placed his briefcase on the floor, his eyes avoiding hers. His silence was heavy, unusual. Layla's excitement faltered, but she brushed it aside and guided him toward the table. "I made something special for us," she continued, her voice eager, almost pleading. 2 years, Adam. Can you believe it?" Adam sat down but did not touch the food. He leaned back, his face pale and distant. And when he finally met her eyes, Layla felt a shiver run through her body. It was not the gaze of a man tired after work, but of someone who had already made a decision he could not undo. "Layla," he began, his voice steady, almost cold. "I can't do this anymore." She froze, her hands still on the napkins she had just placed by his plate. "What do you mean?" He inhaled deeply, as if rehearsing the words before releasing them. "I divorce you. I say it 3 times. Talaq, talaq, talaq." The room fell silent except for the faint hum of traffic outside. The candles flickered, and Layla felt the ground slip away beneath her feet. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes searched his face, desperate for a sign that this was a cruel joke, a misunderstanding, anything but the reality pressing against her chest. You can't mean that," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Adam, this is our anniversary. This is supposed to be." "I mean it," he cut her off sharply. "It's over. I've already made my choice." Layla's breath caught. "Choice?" she repeated, her mind struggling to follow. "Choice of what?" Adam leaned forward, his jaw tight. "Clara. I'm leaving with Clara." Her heart thudded painfully, each beat echoing in her ears. Clara. The name tasted bitter, even as it left her lips. She remembered Clara from the few office gatherings she had attended. A tall, confident woman with sharp eyes and an elegant laugh. Layla had noticed the way Clara hovered near Adam, but she had dismissed it as her own insecurity. Now, that insecurity had turned into a knife cutting through her chest. Layla's eyes welled up, her vision blurring as she tried to steady herself. "After everything we've built, after everything I've sacrificed to be here with you." Adam's expression hardened, but his voice was almost impatient. "I'm sorry, Layla. You'll be fine. You're strong, but I don't love you anymore." Her knees weakened, and she gripped the edge of the table, the wood biting into her palm. The candles she had carefully lit no longer seemed romantic. They mocked her with their flickering light. The food, still steaming on the table, filled the room with an aroma that suddenly felt suffocating. 2 years, she whispered brokenly. 2 years, Adam, and you end it tonight, of all nights? He stood up, his coat still damp, his presence already halfway out the door. "I didn't plan it like this, but it had to be said. Clara is waiting for me." And with that, he picked up his briefcase and left, the door shutting with a final thud that reverberated through the silence. Layla stood there, staring at the empty chair across the table. Her body trembled, not from the cold, but from the hollowness spreading inside her chest. She walked slowly to the window, her reflection staring back at her, a woman in a cream dress, makeup smudged by tears, her carefully planned evening crumbling around her. The rain outside had turned heavier, washing the streets below, but nothing could wash away the betrayal that now defined her anniversary night. She pressed her hand against her heart, whispering to herself in disbelief, "He left me?" For her. And just like that, the love story she thought would last forever ended in the quietest, cruelest way, on the very night she had dreamed of celebrating their union. The silence that followed Adam's departure was unbearable. The apartment, once filled with small laughter and the ordinary sounds of life, now felt hollow. The clock ticked loudly against the wall, each second reminding Layla that her marriage had ended in a single evening. The table was still set, the candles still burning, but everything had turned into a cruel parody of love. She sank into the sofa, her body trembling, her mind racing. Her husband had not only left her, he had destroyed her with words that carried the weight of finality. Morning came slowly, creeping in through the thin curtains. Layla had not slept. She remained curled on the couch, still in the cream dress she had worn for their anniversary dinner. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her lips dry. When her phone buzzed, she saw messages from her family in Jakarta. They had remembered her anniversary, sending congratulations and prayers for her happiness. Layla could not bring herself to reply. She could not tell them that, instead of flowers and love, she had been discarded like nothing. A day later, the truth spread. Adam had not hidden his new relationship. Pictures appeared online of him and Clara holding hands in Paris. Some of Layla's acquaintances sent her the posts with messages of pity. Others simply whispered behind her back. London, once a city of promise, had turned into a place of humiliation. She felt eyes on her everywhere she went, as if the whole world knew her shame. Her mother called late one night, her voice heavy with worry. "Layla, come home. There's nothing for you there anymore. We can take care of you." Layla pressed the phone to her ear, closing her eyes. The thought of going back to Jakarta, of facing neighbors and distant relatives, filled her with dread. She imagined their pitying stares, the gossip that would follow her everywhere. She was divorced with Talaq, they would say. He left her for another woman. "No, Mama," Layla whispered firmly. "I can't come home like this. Not as a failure." "Failure? You did nothing wrong, Nak. He's the one who betrayed you," her mother replied, her voice breaking. "You don't have to fight alone." But Layla shook her head, though her mother could not see it. "If I come home now, it will feel like I ran away. I need to stand on my own, at least for now." After ending the call, she stood in the middle of the apartment, staring at the walls. Every corner of the home carried a memory. The small sofa where she and Adam had once eaten pizza on rainy nights, the kitchen where they had cooked together, laughing at their mistakes, the bed where they had whispered their dreams for the future. Now those memories mocked her. The apartment had turned into a grave for a love that no longer existed. She tried to go about her days as if nothing had changed, but everything had. At the cafe where she worked part-time near Hyde Park, she struggled to smile at customers. She wiped tables and served coffee, her mind heavy with thoughts of Adam. Sometimes she wondered if he would walk in, if he would look at her with regret, but he never came. He had chosen his new life, and in that life, she no longer existed. Nights were the hardest. Alone in the apartment, she would lie awake listening to the city's distant hum. The loneliness pressed on her chest like a weight she could not lift. She thought of Clara often, wondering what she had that Layla lacked. Was it beauty? Confidence? The way she carried herself with ease in social gatherings? Layla compared herself to her relentlessly, feeding her own insecurities until they consumed her. One evening, as she scrolled absent-mindedly through her phone, she stumbled across another photo of Adam and Clara. They were at a dinner in Paris, laughing, glasses of wine raised in a toast. Clara's hand rested proudly on Adam's arm, and his smile was the same smile he once reserved only for Layla. Something inside her broke again. She hurled the phone across the room, her chest heaving with sobs. But the next morning, when she looked at herself in the mirror, Layla saw not only her swollen eyes, but also the faintest spark of defiance. She realized she could not keep living like this, drowning in sorrow while Adam lived freely. If she allowed this pain to define her, she would lose herself completely. Her family called again, her father this time, urging her to come home. His voice was stern, protective. "Layla, enough. Pack your things and come back. You don't have to stay there alone. This is not your battle." But Layla's voice, though quiet, carried a firmness that surprised even her. "Papa, this is my life. If I come home now, I will never forgive myself. I need to prove to myself, not to Adam, that I can stand without him." The call ended, and Layla stood by the window of her apartment, watching the lights of the city flicker in the distance. London was vast, cold, and indifferent, but within its heart, she believed there was still a place for her. A place where she could start again, even if she had to carve it out with her bare hands. Her dreams had been shattered, yes, but she would not let the broken pieces bury her. She would gather them slowly, painfully, and one day build something new. Something that Adam could never take away. For the first time since the night of her anniversary, Layla wiped her tears, straightened her back, and whispered into the empty room, "I'm not running. Not anymore." And with those words, though her heart still ached, a fragile determination began to take root within her. The days that followed were not filled with silence anymore, but with the sting of humiliation. Layla could not escape the shadow of Clara, because Clara made sure the world saw her victory. Social media became a cruel battlefield. Clara posted pictures with Adam as if flaunting a trophy, selfies in front of the Eiffel Tower, dinners in expensive restaurants, shopping sprees with branded bags. Each post was accompanied by captions dripping with pride, like hidden daggers meant for Layla. At first, Layla tried to ignore them, refusing to scroll, but friends sent her screenshots anyway, some out of pity, others out of curiosity. "Have you seen this?" they would ask. They looked serious. Every image pierced deeper into her already fragile heart. The man who once promised her forever now smiled for another woman, and that smile was brighter than any he had ever given her. The whispers grew louder. At the cafe where she worked, a colleague gently asked, "Are you okay?" "I saw, well, the photos." Her tone was sympathetic, but the pity in her eyes made Layla shrink. Another colleague, less kind, muttered when she thought Layla couldn't hear, "Maybe he left because she couldn't keep him happy." Those words echoed in Layla's head long after her shift ended. Nights became her enemy. She would lie in bed staring at the ceiling. The images of Adam and Clara burned into her mind. She began comparing herself relentlessly. Clara's sharp elegance, her long legs, her effortless charm. Layla found herself staring in the mirror, hating the reflection she saw. Was she not pretty enough? Not clever enough? Not exciting enough to keep a man's love? The questions ate away at her self-worth, leaving her fragile and hollow. One evening, when the pain became too much, Layla locked herself in the bathroom, sat on the cold tile floor, and cried until her body shook. She thought about the sacrifices she had made, leaving her family, building a life in a foreign city, cooking, cleaning, loving with all she had, and still it was not enough. Clara, with her perfect smile and designer dresses, had taken everything in a matter of months. Her phone buzzed with more notifications. Clara had uploaded a video story, Adam kissing her cheek, the caption reading, "My love, my forever." Layla's stomach twisted. She turned the phone face down, but even in the darkness, she could still see the image in her mind. The whispers reached Jakarta too. Relatives began asking questions, some sending messages laced with judgment. Why did he leave? Did you not take care of him properly? Every word was another wound. Layla avoided answering, burying herself in work instead. She wiped tables, carried trays, and forced smiles for customers, all the while holding back tears. One night after closing the cafe, her colleague Sophie, a British girl with a kind heart, sat beside her. "Layla, don't let them win," she said gently. "People like Clara live to show off. They need an audience. Don't give her your pain." Layla nodded, though her chest still felt tight. Deep inside, she knew Sophie was right. But knowing and feeling were different battles. She still felt worthless, as though Clara's triumph had erased her existence. When she returned to the apartment, Layla stood in front of the mirror once more. She touched her own face, studying every detail as if searching for flaws. The reflection looked tired, broken, but still human. For the first time in weeks, she whispered to herself, "I am still here." The words sounded weak, but they were something, a small spark in the darkness. Still, the torment of Clara's open flaunting was far from over. Layla knew the road ahead would be filled with more whispers, more pity, and more nights of self-doubt. But somewhere beneath the pain, the seed of defiance began to grow. She was not ready to rise yet, but she knew she could not stay crushed forever. For now, Clara celebrated her triumph with parades of photographs and glamour. For now, Layla endured in silence. But as she wiped away her tears and turned off the light, she felt a fragile thought forming in her heart. One day, the roles would be reversed. One day, it would not be Clara's victory everyone talked about. It would be hers. The first weeks after Adam left had been unbearable, but slowly, necessity forced Layla to move. Rent still needed to be paid, groceries still had to be bought, and life, whether she wanted it or not, continued. Instead of surrendering to her grief, she asked for more hours at the bookstore cafe near Hyde Park. The manager, noticing her quiet dedication, agreed. Soon, Layla was working double shifts, opening in the mornings and closing at night, her days filled with the hum of the espresso machine, the scent of old paper, and the chatter of customers browsing through novels. The work was exhausting, but in a strange way, it kept her alive. The rhythm of pouring coffee, arranging books, and serving customers dulled the sharpness of her heartbreak. She barely had time to sit and dwell on Clara's endless posts or the whispers that followed her. Instead, she threw herself into routine, moving as if on autopilot. Each completed day was a small victory, proof that she could survive without Adam. It was during one of those long evenings that she met Eleanor. The old woman came in just before closing, her gray hair pulled back neatly, her posture straight despite the years. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, and when she ordered a pot of Earl Grey, her voice was soft but commanding. Layla served her politely, assuming she was just another regular customer who enjoyed the cafe's warmth on a cold London night. But Eleanor returned the next evening, and the evening after that. She sat at the same corner table near the window, a notebook always in front of her, sometimes writing, sometimes simply staring out at the rain-slicked streets. Layla grew curious, and one night, when the cafe was nearly empty, she found the courage to speak. "Do you write?" she asked, gesturing toward the notebook. Eleanor looked up, her blue eyes clear despite the wrinkles around them. A faint smile appeared. "Sometimes. Memories, thoughts, fragments of life. Writing has a way of holding pieces together when everything else falls apart." The words struck Layla like an echo of her own hidden pain. That night, she lingered by Eleanor's table, talking longer than she had with anyone since the divorce. She told her, cautiously at first, about coming from Jakarta, about falling in love, about being left behind. Eleanor listened without judgment, her face calm, her silence attentive. When Layla finished, embarrassed by how much she had confessed, Eleanor placed her hand gently over hers. "My dear," she said softly, "the end of love can feel like the end of the world. But sometimes heartbreak is not the closing of your story, it is the doorway to a new one." Layla blinked back tears. No one had said it to her like that before. Most offered pity or advice to return home, but no one had suggested that this pain could be transformed into something else. From that evening on, Eleanor became more than just a customer. She became a mentor, a presence Layla began to depend on. Some nights, Eleanor told her stories about her own youth, of falling in love, of losing her husband after 40 years of marriage, of rebuilding herself when she thought her life had ended. Other nights, she offered quiet lessons disguised as casual remarks. Strength, she would say while stirring her tea, is not in pretending you are unbroken. It is in gathering your fragments and daring to build again. Layla began to carry those words with her. She still felt the sting of humiliation whenever she glimpsed Adam's name or Clara's pictures online, but the despair was no longer as sharp. She started to imagine that maybe, just maybe, her life could hold more than betrayal. At the cafe, customers noticed her smile returning. She was still quieter than before, but her presence had shifted. She stood taller, her voice steadier. She no longer felt invisible. On her breaks, she sometimes wrote in a small notebook Eleanor had given her, filling pages with thoughts she once only whispered to herself. Writing did not erase the pain, but it gave it shape, turning it into something she could face. One cold evening, when the wind howled against the windows, Eleanor told her, "You are stronger than you think, Layla. Don't let this ending define you. Let it free you. What will you do with your freedom?" The question lingered in Layla's mind long after she closed the cafe. Walking home through the damp streets, she repeated it silently. What would she do with her freedom? She didn't know yet, but for the first time since Adam left, the thought of a future didn't terrify her. It stirred something like hope. That night, she placed her phone in a drawer instead of scrolling through Clara's triumphs. She lit a small candle and sat by the window, writing in her notebook until sleep came. Her dreams were still restless, but her mornings no longer felt like punishment. Slowly, painfully, she was picking up the pieces. And somewhere in her heart, she began to believe that one day, those broken pieces could form a new shape, one stronger, brighter, and untouchable by the shadows of Adam or Clara. Winter settled heavily over London, the skies gray and the air biting. Layla had learned to live with the rhythm of her new life. Long hours at the bookstore cafe, evenings writing in her notebook, the occasional tea with Eleanor, who reminded her she was more than her broken marriage. But even as she tried to move forward, Adam's shadow returned in a new form, one that was colder, sharper, and more humiliating than before. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope. At first, she thought it was a bill, but as she opened it and scanned the words, her chest tightened. It was from Adam's lawyer. The letter stated that Layla had no claim to any financial support or assets from the marriage. Adam had signed documents declaring their separation final, and he refused to provide even the minimal settlement she was entitled to under UK law. Her hands shook as she read. She had given up everything to build a life with him, and now he wanted to erase her not only emotionally, but also financially. Clara's handprints were all over this. Layla could almost hear her voice urging Adam, "Cut her off completely. She doesn't deserve a penny." That night, Layla sat at her kitchen table staring at the papers, tears streaming silently down her face. The humiliation was sharp. It wasn't just about money. It was about being discarded, as if her years of love and sacrifice meant nothing. She could almost see Adam's smug expression, satisfied that she would be too broken, too foreign, too small to fight back. But something inside her shifted. The words of Eleanor returned to her. Strength is not pretending you are unbroken. It is in gathering your fragments and daring to build again. Layla realized she could not let Adam silence her this way. She had a right to dignity, and she would fight for it. The next morning, she gathered her courage and searched for legal aid. Her English was good, but the legal system was intimidating. Still, she booked an appointment at a small law office recommended by Sophie from the cafe. When she met the solicitor, a kind but sharp-eyed woman named Margaret, Layla poured out her story. How Adam had pronounced Talaq, how he had left her for another woman, how he now refused to acknowledge her rights. Margaret listened carefully, her pen moving quickly over her notes. "Layla," she said firmly, "you are not powerless here. You are his legal wife under British law. He cannot simply abandon you without responsibility. We will take this to court if we must." Hearing those words was like breathing air for the first time after drowning. Layla left the office with a stack of documents and a small spark of hope in her chest. For once, she felt like she had a weapon against Adam's cruelty. Not revenge, but justice. News of her actions traveled fast. Within weeks, Adam's lawyer sent another letter, this time harsher, accusing Layla of trying to extort money. Clara fueled his arrogance, mocking Layla publicly in subtle ways. She posted a photo of herself in front of a luxury car with the caption, "Independent women don't beg." The implication was clear. Layla felt the sting, but she did not back down. The legal process was slow and draining. There were forms to sign, hearings to attend, evidence to provide. Layla often felt overwhelmed, but Eleanor reminded her to stay steady. Every battle for dignity feels impossible at the start, but you must remember, you are not fighting for money alone. You are fighting for your worth. Adam tried to humiliate her further during the proceedings. He sent messages through lawyers, claiming she had contributed nothing to their life together, that she had lived off him without effort. Layla wanted to scream at the lies, but instead, she held her ground. She showed proof of her work, her contribution to their shared expenses, the sacrifices she had made. Each document was a piece of her truth, slowly dismantling Adam's attempt to erase her. The first hearing was brutal. Adam arrived with Clara by his side, dressed elegantly, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Layla's heart pounded as she entered the courtroom, but Margaret whispered to her, "Hold your head high." And she did. She sat across from Adam, refusing to look away. For the first time since that night of betrayal, she faced him not as a broken wife, but as a woman demanding to be seen. When Adam's lawyer argued that Layla deserved nothing, Margaret countered with calm precision, outlining every right Layla had under the law. The judge listened carefully, his expression stern. Layla didn't understand every detail, but she understood enough. She was not invisible, and she was not without voice. Walking out of the courtroom, Layla felt a mix of exhaustion and quiet triumph. The battle was far from over, but she had taken the first step. She had refused to be silenced. Adam and Clara walked past her without a word, Clara clutching his arm tightly, but Layla no longer felt small in their presence. That night, she returned to her apartment and wrote in her notebook, "Today I chose dignity over silence. Today I began again." The words were shaky, but they were hers. And for the first time, she believed she had the strength to keep fighting, not only against Adam, but for herself. Spring came to London slowly, with trees along the Thames sprouting fresh green leaves and the air warming enough to invite people back into the parks. For Layla, the season felt symbolic. She had spent months caught in the cold of grief, but now, little by little, she was pushing herself to grow again. The court battle with Adam was still ongoing, but instead of letting it consume her, she began looking toward her own future. It started one evening at the cafe when Eleanor asked her, "What do you dream of, Layla? Not what you've lost, but what you still want." The question lingered in her mind. For years, she had measured her dreams through Adam's life, his career, his happiness, their shared plans. But now she had to think for herself. That night, she opened her laptop and searched for courses in London. One program caught her eye, a business management course at King's College. It was designed for professionals looking to start small ventures or build leadership skills. The thought of studying again frightened her, but it also excited her. She applied the next day. When the acceptance email arrived, Layla stared at the screen in disbelief. Her hands trembled, but her lips curved into the first genuine smile she had felt in months. She enrolled. determined to start. The first weeks of the course were difficult. Layla sat in classrooms surrounded by confident students from all over the world. They spoke quickly, debated loudly, and seemed to belong in ways she did not. Her English was good, but she sometimes struggled with academic terms. At night, she returned home exhausted, wondering if she had made a mistake. But Eleanor's words echoed in her heart. Heartbreak can be the doorway to reinvention. Layla refused to quit. She spent long hours in the library, reading textbooks until her eyes blurred, practicing presentations in front of the mirror, taking meticulous notes. She poured all the pain and emptiness she carried into her studies, as if every page she read was a step away from Adam's shadow. Weeks turned into months, and slowly she changed. In class, her voice grew steadier. She began raising her hand, contributing ideas. Her classmates started to notice her dedication. A few even sought her out for group projects, impressed by her sharp observations. One evening, after she gave a presentation on women entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia, her professor nodded approvingly. "Excellent research, Miss Rahman. You have a keen eye for detail." The praise lit something inside her. For the first time since her marriage crumbled, she felt recognized for her own mind, not dismissed as someone's wife. Outside of class, Layla worked just as hard. She continued her shifts at the cafe, balancing trays and textbooks, often studying late into the night. The exhaustion was real, but so was the sense of progress. Each day, she felt her confidence grow. She no longer saw herself only as the woman Adam left behind. She began to see herself as someone capable of building a life on her own. The transformation was visible. Her coworkers noticed how she carried herself differently, no longer shrinking when customers were rude or when Clara's name appeared in whispers. Even her reflection in the mirror looked different. The sadness in her eyes was still there, but beneath it was a new strength. One afternoon, walking across the college courtyard with books in her arms, Layla paused to take in the sight. Students laughing, the sun glinting off the old stone buildings, the hum of possibility in the air. She whispered to herself, "I belong here." Her notebook, once filled with pain, now held plans. She wrote down business ideas, sketches for projects she wanted to start, and goals for the future. Eleanor smiled proudly when Layla showed her the notes. "You see," she said, "out of the ashes, you are building something new." The nights were still hard sometimes. Memories of Adam and Clara haunted her dreams, but unlike before, she no longer let them break her. Instead, she used the ache as fuel, reminding herself why she worked so hard. She was no longer fighting only against their betrayal. She was fighting for the woman she wanted to become. By the end of the term, Layla had changed. She walked through King's College with her head held high, not as the broken wife abandoned on her anniversary, but as a determined student, a woman rebuilding herself piece by piece. Her sense of self, once shattered, was returning stronger than ever. And though she didn't know it yet, the foundation she was laying would one day lead her far beyond the reach of Adam and Clara's shallow triumphs. The day Layla finished her business course at King's College, she walked out of the grand old building with her certificate in hand and tears in her eyes. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was proof that she had survived, proof that she had turned her pain into strength. Eleanor met her outside with a small bouquet of daffodils, smiling proudly. "This," she told Layla, "is only the beginning." Eleanor was right. Layla wanted to do more than survive. She wanted to create something meaningful. In her classes, she had been most inspired when studying businesses that gave voice to the voiceless. She remembered her own struggles as an immigrant woman in London, invisible and judged. And she thought of the many women she had met through the cafe, each carrying silent stories of resilience. The idea came to her slowly but firmly, a publishing startup dedicated to immigrant women's voices. She shared her vision with Eleanor one evening over tea. "What if there was a place," Layla said, her voice trembling with excitement, "where women like us could tell our stories? Not polished fairy tales, but the real struggles and triumphs. Eleanor's eyes lit up. Then build it, Layla. Let your pain become the foundation for others' courage. With Eleanor's encouragement, Layla used her small savings and a modest business loan to launch New Dawn Publishing. At first, it was nothing more than a rented office above a bakery in East London, with a second-hand desk, a laptop, and stacks of notebooks. But to Layla, it felt like a kingdom of possibility. She reached out to immigrant women she had met, inviting them to submit their writings, poems, and memoirs. Slowly, manuscripts trickled in. The first anthology she published was called Unheard Voices. It featured stories from women who had fled war, endured broken marriages, or rebuilt their lives in foreign lands. Layla edited the pieces late into the night, pouring her soul into every page. When the book was finally printed, she held the first copy in her hands with trembling fingers. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like a vessel of truth. The launch was small, held in the cafe where she still worked part-time. A handful of readers attended, but the atmosphere was electric. Women stood up and read their stories aloud, their voices cracking with emotion. Layla watched with pride as the audience clapped, some with tears in their eyes. For the first time, she wasn't only surviving her own story, she was helping others tell theirs. Word spread quickly. A local newspaper wrote a feature about New Dawn Publishing, praising Layla's mission. Invitations began arriving for her to speak at community events. Then came something bigger, an email from an international women's rights conference in Berlin asking her to present her work. Layla could hardly believe it. The night before the conference, she stood in front of her mirror practicing her speech. Her hands shook at first, but then she steadied herself. She remembered the broken woman in a cream dress who had cried alone on her anniversary night, and she whispered to her reflection, "You're not her anymore." In Berlin, she stood on stage in front of hundreds of people from around the world. She spoke about resilience, about how heartbreak and displacement could become the seeds of reinvention. She read excerpts from Unheard Voices, her voice clear and steady. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People lined up to meet her afterward, thanking her for shining light on stories too often ignored. From that moment on, her name began to carry weight. She was no longer just the wife Adam abandoned. She became Layla Rahman, founder of New Dawn Publishing, a woman whose life story was reshaping others. Invitations to conferences poured in: Amsterdam, New York, Dubai. Each stage she stepped onto built her confidence further, and each book she published gave more women a chance to be seen. Through it all, Eleanor remained her anchor, sitting proudly at the front row of her talks whenever she could. "See?" she would whisper afterward. "I told you heartbreak was a doorway. And look at the world you've built on the other side." Layla smiled at that. She had risen from the ashes, and now she was building something far greater than she had ever imagined. Her pain had not been wasted. It had been transformed into power, not the kind that destroyed, but the kind that lifted others with her. And slowly, whispers about her began to replace the old ones. No longer did people only mention Clara's glamour or Adam's betrayal. Now, when Layla's name was spoken, it was in the same breath as resilience, empowerment, and hope. Her story was no longer one of loss, it was one of triumph. While Layla's world was expanding with conferences, books, and recognition, Adam's world was quietly beginning to rot from within. On the surface, he and Clara still paraded themselves through parties and luxury dinners, posting photos of vacations and fine dining. But behind the polished smiles and champagne glasses, cracks were forming. It began at Adam's company. A routine audit uncovered irregularities in the financial records, and soon whispers of misconduct spread through the office halls. Clients grew suspicious, and some pulled out of contracts. At first, Adam dismissed it as jealousy from colleagues, but when newspapers began to report on possible embezzlement and misuse of company funds, his once untouchable image faltered. Clara, who had basked in the glow of his success, grew restless. The glamour she loved began to dim. No more weekend trips to Paris, no more new designer handbags each season. Instead, Adam returned home late at night, his face tight with stress, his phone buzzing with calls from lawyers and angry partners. Clara confronted him one evening in their flat, her tone sharp. "You promised me security, Adam. I didn't leave everything for you just to end up broke." Adam snapped, slamming his fist against the table. "Do you think this is what I wanted? Do you think I planned for this mess?" Their arguments became routine, bitter words filling the space that once held laughter. Clara, who had once been dazzling and seductive, now carried a permanent scowl. Adam, who once exuded confidence, now looked smaller, defeated by the weight of scandal. When the financial crisis deepened, the company cut Adam loose, firing him to protect its reputation. Headlines followed, "Business executive under investigation." His name, once respected in his circle, became tainted. Invitations to parties stopped arriving, and old friends no longer returned his calls. Clara grew colder by the day. Without Adam's money, the relationship lost its sparkle. She began spending nights away, claiming she was with friends. One evening, Adam came home to find her packing her bags. "Where are you going?" he demanded, panic rising in his voice. Clara didn't flinch. "I'm not going down with you. You're ruined, Adam. I didn't sign up for this life of debt and shame." He tried to stop her, but she walked out without looking back, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a drumbeat of finality. Within days, she was seen on social media again, this time on the arm of another wealthy man, her smile bright as ever. Adam was left alone in a small, half-empty apartment. The rent on their old luxury flat was overdue, and creditors hounded him. The once flawless suits hung loose on his frame, his hair unkempt, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He drank to numb the silence, but the silence only grew louder. He thought often of Layla during those nights, though never with pride. In his bitterness, he told himself she was weak, that she had surely returned home in shame. He did not know the truth, that while he was crumbling, she was standing on stages around the world, her name celebrated for resilience. The glamorous facade he and Clara had built collapsed entirely. What had begun as a stolen triumph ended in humiliation. Adam, once the man who had chosen a mistress over his wife on their anniversary night, now had nothing but debt, disgrace, and an empty bed. And though Layla did not see it directly, the symmetry of their lives was clear. The more Adam fell, the higher she rose. Their destinies, once intertwined, had split apart completely, one sinking, the other soaring. The ballroom in New York shimmered under golden chandeliers, filled with the hum of voices from leaders, authors, and activists gathered for the International Women's Empowerment Awards. Layla sat at one of the front tables, her hands resting lightly on her lap, her heart beating fast but steady. She had been nominated for the Global Voice Award, an honor recognizing her publishing house and its work, amplifying immigrant women's stories. It was the kind of night she had once only dreamed of, a night that confirmed she had built something lasting from the ashes of her past. When her name was called, applause echoed through the room. Layla rose, walking toward the stage with her head high. She accepted the award, a polished crystal trophy, and delivered her speech. She spoke of resilience, of turning heartbreak into strength, of how women who had been silenced could rise to tell their truths. Her voice was calm, measured, yet filled with quiet fire. When she finished, the applause came again, stronger, longer. She stepped down from the stage, glowing with a sense of peace she had not felt in years. After the ceremony, the guests mingled in the reception hall, sipping champagne and exchanging congratulations. Layla was surrounded by people who wanted to shake her hand, take pictures, and ask about her work. But amid the crowd, her eyes caught sight of a familiar figure standing alone near the back wall. For a moment, she thought she was mistaken. The man looked smaller, his shoulders hunched, his suit worn and ill-fitted. His once sharp face was now lined, his eyes tired, and his hair peppered with gray. But when he lifted his gaze, she froze. It was Adam, her breath caught in her throat. Memories flooded back. The night of their anniversary, his cold words of Talaq, Clara's triumphant smile. For a second, the old pain flickered in her chest. But then she stood straighter, realizing she was no longer that broken woman in a cream dress. Adam hesitated before stepping toward her. His movements were slow, uncertain, nothing like the confident man who once left her behind. When he finally reached her, his voice was low, heavy with something she had never heard from him before, regret. "Layla," he began, his eyes searching hers. "I didn't know if I should come, but when I saw your name here, I had to. You look incredible. You've done so much." Layla remained silent, her expression calm. He swallowed hard, his voice breaking slightly. "I destroyed everything between us. I was arrogant, selfish. Clara, she's gone. She left years ago. I lost my career, my friends. I lost everything. But what hurts most is knowing I lost you." His eyes glistened. "I don't deserve it, but can you forgive me?" The room seemed to fall silent around them, though people still talked and laughed nearby. Layla studied him, the man who had once been her whole world but was now just a shadow of his former self. She could see the weight of years of mistakes pressing down on him, the loneliness etched into his face. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice steady. "Forgiveness isn't for you, Adam. It's for me. I forgave you a long time ago, not because you asked, but because I refused to carry you in my heart any longer." His eyes widened slightly, and he nodded as if those words were both a relief and a punishment. "I understand," he whispered. Layla adjusted the award in her hands, offering him a small, calm smile. "We are not the same people anymore. You made your choice, and I made mine, and look where it brought us." Adam's lips trembled as he tried to speak again, but no words came. He lowered his gaze, shoulders sagging, and stepped back, giving her space. Layla turned away gracefully, rejoining the crowd of people who celebrated her for the woman she had become. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Adam belonged to her past, and the past had no power over her anymore. As the evening continued, flashes of cameras lit up the hall, capturing Layla's poised smile and the crystal award in her hands. She stood under the lights, not as a victim of betrayal, but as a symbol of resilience. Somewhere deep inside, she whispered to herself, "I was never his to throw away." The gala continued into the late hours of the night, but for Layla, the moment that mattered most had already passed. She had looked into Adam's eyes and seen the ruins of a man who once thought he could discard her without consequence. She had listened to his plea, not with anger or longing, but with the calm of someone who had already healed. In her heart, there was no hatred left, only clarity. As the music swelled and guests filled the dance floor, Layla stood near the tall windows, gazing out at the New York skyline. The city glittered with 1,000 lights, each one a reminder of how vast the world was, how many possibilities still lay before her. She thought of the woman she used to be, the one who cried alone on the couch in Kensington, believing her life was over. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, freer, and unbroken. Reporters asked for photos, and cameras flashed around her. People congratulated her again, shaking her hand, calling her an inspiration. She accepted their words with grace, her smile steady. Not long ago, she had been invisible, silenced by betrayal. Now her name was spoken with respect in rooms she had once never dreamed of entering. When the gala ended, Layla stepped outside into the cool night air. The streets of Manhattan buzzed with life. Yellow cabs rushing by, neon lights glowing, people laughing in the distance. She walked slowly down the steps of the venue, the award clutched gently in her hand. Each step felt like a release, as though she was walking further and further away from the weight of her past. She thought briefly of Adam again, of the man who had left her on their anniversary, of the night she spent questioning her worth, of the humiliation Clara had flaunted. And yet, instead of bitterness, she felt only a quiet acceptance. Forgiveness was not about excusing what they had done. It was about freeing herself from the prison of their betrayal. By forgiving, she had taken back her power. At the edge of the sidewalk, she paused, lifting her face to the skyline. The skyscrapers rose above her like guardians, their windows glittering against the night sky. The city felt alive, limitless, as though it was welcoming her into a future she had earned. Her lips curved into a small, contented smile. "I was never his to throw away," she whispered softly, her words carried away by the hum of the city. And with that, Layla turned, walking forward with her head high. She was not walking toward anyone, not Adam, not Clara, not even her old self. She was walking into her own story, one she had written with strength, dignity, and freedom. Her journey had begun in ashes, but it ended here in light.